Part 83. I have no human rights, no freedom, so insulted. Heartbroken, it hurts. Bai Xuelan's aura has always been restrained and amazing. It was a knife that had been cut through and drank blood. It was usually hidden in a gorgeous scabbard with gems embedded in it. It was calm. Only those who knew it knew how shocking the insignificant dark light was. Xuan Huaifeng was familiar with him, and not only understood, but also knew how powerful it was. When Bai Xuelan asked casually, he just poked his guilty conscience and was shocked. Seeing his expression, Bai Xuelan knew that he had guessed correctly. Like a knife in the heart, someone suddenly mixed a handful of salt into the wound, and it suddenly hurt a little. The smile on his face deepened, waiting for Xuan Huaifeng to answer. Sure enough, Xuan Huaifeng nodded and said, "Yes." Bai Xuelan asked softly, "What is it?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I met Lin Qijun yesterday. Carefully ask them what they have said and done when they met, and they will be scrutinized like a thief." He stopped and pursed his lips, waiting for Bai Xuelan to be tortured. Unexpectedly, Bai Xuelan didn't say a word, and the corners of his lips slowly lowered. His handsome face became terrifying, and his body suddenly leaned over. He is tall and threatening, and Xuan Huaifeng has often been in physical conflict with him these days. Knowing that his strength is terrifying, he is good at making moves without warning. And he can restrain people all at once. At this time, Xuan Huaifeng's nerves were already tense, and when he saw him move, he didn't think much about it. The first subconscious reaction was to raise his arms and protect his head. Bai Xuelan froze for a moment and froze on the spot, full of anger. It was as if someone had blown a breath of winter air into his chest, and the flames were frozen into ice. He was angry that Xuan Huaifeng met with Lin Qijun secretly, and kept it from himself. Xuan Huaifeng's lingering affection for Lin Qijun is not over. He was so angry that he thought that he had already talked with Xuan Huaifeng that night, and that he thought that when he fell asleep with Xuan Huaifeng in his arms that night, it was because of mutual understanding, and there was no internal trouble in dealing with Daxin Yangxing. Annoyed with all his efforts, Xuan Huaifeng still can't let go of a surnamed Lin. He was angry with his surname Pai, and was dissatisfied with Xuan Huaifeng's heart. He couldn't let Xuan Huaifeng give up everyone and everything for him, but now the cold wind blew all his anger away. Bai Xuelan stared at the man on the bed. He couldn't even see the delicate face that he was most obsessed with. Xuan Huaifeng holds his head in his hands, like a victim who often faces tyranny. Like a vulnerable person who has suffered many injuries. In an instant, Bai Xuelan understood what a terrible image he was in Xuan Huaifeng's heart. He was stunned for a long time, feeling amused. Funny enough to cry. Bai Xuelan, is it so bad for Xuan Huaifeng? So unscrupulous? So unreasonable? So scary? It turned out that from before to now, I was just self-deprecating. No matter how meaningless love is. It's just that I wasted my time, and I despised myself. Bai Xuelan swallowed hard and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't be afraid. I won't hit you." Xuan Huaifeng didn't really think that Bai Xuelan would fight people. But the scene of being dragged into the bathroom by Bai Xuelan yesterday and rubbing his body red with hot water is still in front of his eyes. The action of resisting is purely instinctive. Hearing that Bai Xuelan's tone was very different from before, he couldn't help being surprised, lowered his arms and looked up at Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan twitched the corners of his lips and smiled distortedly, with a hint of heartbreak in his eyes. Xuan Huaifeng felt remorse. Meeting Lin Qijun was not in his plan at all. It was a complete coincidence. This matter really shouldn't be hidden from Bai Xuelan. Xuan Huaifeng also knew that he was wrong. If Bai Xuelan wanted to fight or make trouble, it would be fine. He didn't expect Bai Xuelan to just stare at him with heartbroken eyes. Xuan Huaifeng felt even more guilty. I'm in the hospital. He didn't finish his sentence. However, Bai Xuelan waved his hand, motioned him to stop talking, helped him to lie down on the bed, and said, "Sleep." The two words were said without ups and downs. And they were so calm that it made one's heart palpitate. Xuan Huaifeng did not dare to say any more, and lay on his back obediently. His dark pupils looked at Bai Xuelan, his eyes full of unfinished words. After Bai Xuelan asked him to lie down, he turned around and left. Xuan Huaifeng stared at his back and disappeared at the door. The back was broad, straight, and majestic, but with a trace of unnerving coldness. Xuan Huaifeng thought for a long time before realizing that Bai Xuelan left from the head of the bed and finally disappeared without looking back. That lunch, Bai Xuelan didn't go back to the room to eat. Xuan Huaifeng knew that he was angry, and naturally he didn't have a good appetite. After the meal, Dr. Kindle came by appointment. He knew that Xuan Huaifeng was not sick, but because Bai Xuelan was too domineering, he had no choice but to perfunctory. However, this patient, Xuan Huaifeng, was very much liked by the doctor. Without Bai Xuelan watching intently, Dr. Kindle breathed a sigh of relief at first, and asked Xuan Huaifeng 2 or 3 questions in the professional tone of a doctor. He is a well-known doctor and a foreigner. He charges 180 yuan for a visit, because Bai Xuelan said that the consultation fee is doubled. And the sum of the consultation fee and the travel fee is almost 200 yuan. Dr. Jindal has been in China for a long time, and he also knows that the courtesy and reciprocity. Since he took the money from others, it will take at least half an hour to live with them. So he found a chair and sat down, chatting gossip with Xuan Huaifeng. When I asked, I found out that Xuan Huaifeng came back from overseas in the UK. Dr. Kindle was surprised at first, then calmed down and said, I see, I have this feeling. You have the demeanor of an English gentleman. Xuan Huaifeng said, you have done a great job. Dr. Kindle said, Mr. Xuan, you have the demeanor of an English gentleman, as well as the temperament of Eastern China. Mysterious temperament. I treat many people, and I can smell the difference between people. Xuan Huaifeng listened, and fell with a move in his heart. He asked with interest, then the owner of this mansion, Mr. Bai Xuelan, what did you smell? Dr. Kindle waved his hand without thinking and replied, Beast, I think of beast. If you are on the road, normal people should avoid him when they see him. Haha laughed twice. Xuan Huaifeng didn't expect him to speak so directly, but was taken aback. Hearing his straightforward smile, he also smiled bitterly. The two chatted for a while. Dr. Kindle looked at his watch. It was almost time. He prescribed some vitamins to Xuan Huaifeng and got up to leave. Xuan Huaifeng originally planned to stroll in the back garden, but when he looked at the door, he inevitably thought of the back of Bai Xuelan leaving. He thought, this man has a very weird temper. If he comes back for a while and doesn't see him in the room, I don't know what will happen. In that case, it is better to stay in the room and wait for him. So, he waits until it turns cloudy. It turned from sunny to cloudy, and then waited until the sunset fell, and the sunset was brilliant. Then wait until the sunset turns from red to dark, from dark to black, and blends into the night sky. Hearing that Xuan Huaifeng didn't ring the bell for dinner at 8 o'clock, he walked in and asked, Adjutant Xuan, do you want to have dinner in the room? Xuan Huaifeng asked, where's the chief? Where did he say that? Eat? The servant smiled and said, the chief has eaten at the small dining room earlier. After a pause, he looked a little surprised, and asked Xuan Huaifeng, you don't know? The chief said that there are a lot of official duties today, and everyone will eat on their own. Then, you can ask the kitchen to make me a bowl of white porridge. I want another plate of cucumber with sauce, and don't buy anything else. I won't eat it if I get it, to waste. The servant went out, and after a while, he brought white porridge and cucumbers over. Xuan Huaifeng ate the wind food without knowing its taste, and asked the servant to clean up the dishes and go out, sitting by the window alone in a daze. After thinking about it, Bai Xuelan was not angry this time, but rather angry. Like this, is it going to be a cold war? In the late summer night wind, the grass and insects outside the window whispered, one after another. It was very lively. A crescent moon hangs high in the sky, covering everything with a cold silver light. Xuan Huaifeng looked out through the window. The wall of the small courtyard blocked his view, and half a tree of white flowers were exposed outside the wall. Although it is still summer, as soon as summer is gone, autumn and winter are bound to come. People are not good for 1,000 days. And flowers are not red for 100 days. If you think so, plants are much wiser than insects. Xuan Huaifeng indulged himself, thinking about these nihilistic things. And let the horse of thought gallop under the dark night. However, he knew that there was a place in his heart that he couldn't hide. After a while, I looked at my watch again. The hour hand had already pointed to between 11 and 12. Half an hour later, it would be the second day. He had originally decided that no matter how angry Bai Xuelan was, he would go back to his room to sleep. Now, looking at his watch, he became increasingly uneasy. First, he sat by the window and looked into the distance, and then took a chair and went to the yard to enjoy the cool air and wait. Waiting for someone is the hardest thing in the world. The more you wait for a second, the more uncomfortable it will be. Xuan Huaifeng remembered what Bai Xuelan looked like today when he left without turning his head, and his heart was half hanging. First, he was uneasy, then uneasy. In the unease, there was a strong sense of unwillingness. Ordinary people meet old acquaintances, what is it? Besides, it was just a coincidence. Does he have no human rights? Don't you have the freedom to see friends? If Bai Xuelan was in front of him, he would have to talk to Bai Xuelan seriously about this issue before giving up. But Bai Xuelan didn't even show his face. Now, he was randomly rounded and flattened by Bai Xuelan. Xuan Huaifeng stood up in the night wind, pursed his lips, and walked outside the courtyard gate. After leaving the courtyard door, he walked about 10 steps, and looked at the mottled light spots reflected by the electric lights under the shade of the trees, and suddenly stopped. I thought to myself, if he doesn't come all night, should I be in a hurry to invite him? I'm at this point. This time, he must be 10 times more arrogant. Gritting his teeth, he turned around. He entered the room by himself, washed in a hurry, and fell asleep alone. The next morning, I closed my eyes and groped around me groggily, felt empty, and woke up immediately. Turning over and sitting up, looking at half of the empty bed, my heart sank. Bai Xuelan didn't come all night. Xuan Huaifeng was very uncomfortable. But if he wanted to make a big noise about this kind of thing, he was thin-skinned and couldn't do it anyway. He could only endure getting out of bed to wash up. And when the servant brought breakfast, he deliberately didn't ask where Bai Xuelan was going, pretended to have had breakfast calmly, put on the military uniform of the customs office, and called Song Ren over and asked him to prepare a car. Song Ren asked, "Where are you going today? Have you made an appointment?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I can't eat plain rice every day. It's annoying. Go to the General Administration of Customs for work." Song Ren agreed to go out and call the driver, thinking that every move of Adjutant Xuan was a great event for the chief. Now that the chief is at home, it is better to ask the chief that it is safer. Go around the small dining room, and tell the chief that Xuan Huaifeng is going out. Bai Xuelan put himself to the wind for a night, and he was still eating braised pork buns. Hearing Song Ren come to ask, he raised his eyebrows and looked at Song Ren. Song Ren was stung by his gaze and knew that the chief was in a very bad mood, but unfortunately, he knew that, but he was not as smart as Adjutant's son. If Adjutant's son saw Bai Xuelan's terrifying expression, he would have smeared oil on the soles of his feet, and he would have been stunned, awaiting reply. Song Ren is a sincere person. Bai Xuelan asked, "What did he say?" Song Ren said, "Adjutant Xuan said that he can't eat white rice every day. It's annoying and he should go to work at the General Administration of Customs." Bai Xuelan's face became even darker, and he asked, "What do you mean by being disgusting? Did others dislike him? Or did he dislike others?" Song Ren was confused by Bai Xuelan's question and scratched his head, saying, "I see Adjutant Xuan. It's probably just saying that casually, and it doesn't mean anything else." Bai Xuelan said coldly, "You are very familiar with him, you know what he is thinking and what he means. This is serious." Song Ren didn't dare to say anything for a long time, and then he said tentatively, "Chief, you still need to give some instructions, I'm easy to handle." Bai Xuelan asked, "Instructions? What instructions should I give?" Song Ren said, "Adjutant Xuan wants to go to the customs office, do you agree or not?" "Do I agree or not?" Bai Xuelan said with a sneer, paused for a while, and suddenly threw the braised pork bun in his hand to the ground. Fireland stood up and widened his eyes. "Don't promise to be a bum all the time, look. Isn't he having a private meeting with his old lover right under my nose? I'm blind, so are you all. Damn it, it's going to rain, my mother is going to get married, what kind of silliness do I have? I figured it out, flies don't hold seamless eggs, he's not such a bastard, and the surnamed Lin can't hook up. Good, he likes the little white-faced surnamed Lin, don't hide it, even if it's obvious. I don't care, I won't serve you anymore." A thunderous scolding made Song Ren, a big man in Shandong with a loud voice, shrank. Bai Xuelan swept away his hands, and the breakfast table was full of bangs, and he smashed the porcelain and destroyed the jade, and the gravy was flowing. The more he cursed, the more angry he became. He pointed to the door of the small dining room and said to Song Ren, "Go and tell him that in the future, he will go wherever he falls in love. And he will talk to whomever he likes. Doesn't he want human rights? He wants freedom? I'll give it to him." He didn't know that Xuan Huaifeng was outside the small dining room at the moment, and he was only separated from him by a wall. Xuan Huaifeng asked Song Ren to prepare the car just now. Sitting in the room, he gradually calmed down and was no longer as angry as when he first got up. After thinking about it, he finally concealed it first, and it was right to admit a mistake to Bai Xuelan. After asking a servant, I found out that Bai Xuelan was having breakfast in the small dining room. He finally mustered up his courage outside, and just as he was about to walk in, he heard Bai Xuelan's merciless scolding. Bai Xuelan was full of anger, and when he roared, the roof rustled, and every word of those words jumped into Xuan Huaifeng's ears like cannonballs. Hearing a private meeting with an old lover, Xuan Huaifeng's body trembled, and he was stunned. Listening blankly, flies don't hold seamless eggs, and so on, Xuan Huaifeng listened. His temples jumped, and his eyes turned black. No matter how serious his sin was, he just met Lin Qijun once, so why was he so insulted? The more Xuan Huaifeng listened, the more angry he became. His blood was surging. He wanted to rush in to confront Bai Xuelan, but he couldn't exert any strength. He was panting hard when he heard Song Ren answering a few tremblingly saying, "Chief, if you really don't care, then I'll go to work." Xuan Huaifeng knew that Song Ren would follow suit. When he came out, he would never run into him. With the last of his strength, He turned around suddenly and rushed behind the crescent gate. He came out along the crescent moon door, and he didn't know what was in his mind. There seemed to be clouds floating in front of him. He dangled around the rockery and unknowingly went back to the small courtyard. Song Ren went back to the room and couldn't find him. He was anxious, seeing him coming along the grass by the water. He hurriedly greeted him and said, "Adjutant Xuan, where have you been? Let me look for you for a while. The car is ready. Now, do you want to go now?" Xuan Huaifeng stood dumbfounded, watching his mouth open and close, only to wake up when Song Ren tapped him on the shoulder, and glanced at Song Ren's face, said, "Let's go then." The car stopped at the customs office. The driver came over and opened the car door. Xuan Huaifeng got out of the car, raised his head to meet the scorching sun. His eyes were full of gold stars, his body swayed in place, and immediately resumed standing firm. After standing for a while, he gradually calmed down, then straightened the placket of his clothes and walked in with knee-length sheepskin military boots. "Hello, Adjutant Xuan. Adjutant Xuan, are you here?" In the office hall on the first floor of the General Administration of Customs, many staff who came and went stopped to greet him with a nod. He nodded one by one, and for some reason, he still knew how to smile. When Song Ren arrived at the General Administration of Customs, it was regarded as Bai Xuelan's territory, so he didn't have to follow him closely. Xuan Huaifeng went to the adjutant's office upstairs alone, twisted the doorknob and locked it. Fortunately, in addition to adjutant's son, he also took this key, took it out, opened the door, walked to his seat and sat down. After resting for a while, I gradually felt that something was coming up in my heart. When I touched a very painful place, I hurriedly told myself not to think about it. Suddenly, I stood up, opened the door, and asked the Internal Affairs Department at the opposite door. "Today I have to hand it over to the chief. Send all the documents you read." Someone in the Internal Affairs Department replied. After a while, a young clerk came over with a bunch of things in his arms. Xuan Huaifeng said, "Put them all on my table." The staff complied, stacking them all on Xuan Huaifeng's table. Xuan Huaifeng went back to sit, twisted open the ink cap, took out the pen he loved in his pocket, sucked up enough water, put the documents in different categories, wrote suggestions on small pieces of paper, and stuck them one by one as a superior. After doing it for 2 hours, my neck was sore and my eyes were sore, and I felt thirsty. I put down my pen and went to the hot water heater at the end of the corridor outside and poured a cup of hot water. He walked back with hot water, not far from the door of the adjutant's office, and faintly saw a figure standing by his desk, looking down at the document he had just made, a bit like Bai Xuelan. Xuan Huaifeng's heart was rekindled, and he suddenly jumped violently. Although he remembered the heart-wrenching words he heard in the morning, at that moment, his chest was like ice and fire. And he didn't listen to rational instructions. He suppressed his excitement and leaned into the room. The man turned around and said with a smile, "You are so diligent. You arrived earlier than me today, and you did all your official duties by 8 or 9. It turned out to be adjutant's son." Xuan Huaifeng saw clearly that it was him. The frantic heart in his chest suddenly lost its heat, and his blushing cheeks turned white. Afraid that this transparent and smart colleague would see something wrong, he forced a smile and said, "It's long overdue. I came back to work. I was away a while ago. Thank you for your hard work." Adjutant's son said, "Between us, don't say such foreign words. He is Bai Xuelan's confidant and lives in the White Mansion like Xuan Huaifeng." Today, Bai Xuelan was so angry in the small dining room, how could he not hear the wind? Now that I see Xuan Huaifeng's appearance, I understand a little bit more in my heart. For his boss Bai Xuelan's earth-shattering love, This subordinate has always kept a distance and avoided it if he could. Therefore, he also kept his duty. He did not ask more questions, pretended to know nothing, and said to Xuan Huaifeng, "Since you are here, I will not be polite to you. Please finish these official documents first." The anti-smoking and anti-drug regulations of the Prime Minister are the things that the Prime Minister has designated to do. It is not good to delay. I will go to the archives to get some old government regulations. When you have finished these, I will organize the information. Xuan Huaifeng nodded and said, "Let's do it this way." Adjutant's son went to collect a lot of information, sat down, and worked hard. The desks of the two were facing each other, and they each started their own work, which was very quiet for a while. After Xuan Huaifeng wrote down the documents, he walked over to Adjutant's son to see how he was doing. Adjutant's son picked up a stack of yellowed old papers on his desk and said, "Here, one is a smoking ban issued by the former Tianjin governor, and the other is an opium interference law issued by the Shanghai mayor 2 years ago. The old laws in other places are not as real as these two. I think we can borrow 1 or 2 of our new laws." Xuan Huaifeng picked it up, read it carefully, compared the two, and said after deliberation, "There is something worth learning from. There is only one place that makes people uncomfortable. In this regulation, foreigners are extremely taboo. If you look here, it clearly states that foreigners cannot be searched. Another example is here, where people were caught selling cigarettes. Although the Chinese people are punished severely, they can also be beheaded. But if the foreigners are caught, they will be handed over to the foreign consulates. Those foreign consulates, how will they punish their own people? This is an empty space. Just block it." Adjutant's son pondered for a while, smiled bitterly, and said in a low voice, "The country is weak, and the people are poor. It's easier said than done to fight against the foreigners. Next month, the government has important things to do. I will see the Prime Minister. I don't want to offend the foreigners at this time." Xuan Huaifeng asked, "Is it the Six Nation talks?" Adjutant's son said, "No way." He gave Xuan Huaifeng a deep look. Although Xuan Huaifeng didn't know the deep meaning in his eyes, he could see that something was wrong and couldn't help asking, "Is there something wrong?" Adjutant's son was slightly surprised when he saw that he didn't know anything. "Only then did I know that Bai Xuelan met Xuan Huaifeng yesterday. And he didn't mention anything about the investigation of Daxin Yangxing Trade Company, Limited and Lin Kejian's counter-argument. Since the chief didn't mention it, he had no reason to get involved." Adjutant's son shook his head and said lightly, "It's not a big deal. But the Six Nation talks is about to start, and the State Council above attaches great importance to it. Our office, naturally. We have to be more cautious. I heard that the chief was called by the Prime Minister today. Probably it's also for this matter." Xuan Huaifeng was secretly thinking about why Bai Xuelan had not been seen yet, but he couldn't ask the question because of the evil anger in his heart. After hearing Adjutant's son say, "I understood. On this day, I worked hard all day, and I ate lunch in a hurry. After I finished eating, I continued to work. I was very tired." Xuan Huaifeng felt that this was a more realistic way of living. After 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Song Ren came to ask, and Xuan Huaifeng said to wait. Adjutant's son persuaded, "You can't eat a big fat man in one day. Let's go back and rest first. We can always continue to do it tomorrow." Xuan Huaifeng returned to the small courtyard, and saw that the house was crawling under the faint twilight, not a single light was on. And he knew that no one was inside. Hearing Bai Xuelan's words outside the wall during the day, it was like a thunderbolt, but at this moment, it drowned in the lake of my heart. Instead, it was quiet and the anger was gone, just a faint sigh. He is not very angry with Bai Xuelan, nor is he not angry with Bai Xuelan. I neither want to break up with Bai Xuelan nor reconcile with Bai Xuelan. After thinking about it, it is better not to communicate with each other in old age, so as not to be sad. Xuan Huaifeng let out a long sigh, went into the yard by himself, turned on the light and closed the door, ate and bathed, only felt lonely, but also had the beauty of loneliness. Lifting the quilt and going to bed, I stared blankly for a long time with my eyes open. He grabbed Bai Xuelan's pillow, hugged it in his arms, and slept in a ball. When he was half asleep, someone seemed to kiss the tip of his brow and hair, feeling very familiar and gentle, and Xuan Huaifeng woke up suddenly. He opened my eyes and looked around, but the night was like water, and the cold window faced the moon. Very lonely. Bai Xuelan's roar began to reverberate in his mind involuntarily. Flies don't hold slack eggs, he's not such a bastard. And the surnamed Lin can't hook up. He likes the little white-faced surnamed Lin, don't hide it, just go with it. Where will he fall in love in the future? Go there. Speak with whomever you love to talk to. I don't serve you anymore. He remembered every word. Heartbroken. It's true, it hurts.